Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of EOXS's Stories on Steel. This is a steel industry podcast featuring the big names of the business and the advice/stories they've accrued over their years as insiders. Steel has been a vital component in American life for well over a century, and the men and women who helped it flourish are a diverse group of innovators full of interesting tales. We hope to share some of said tales here with you today. Thanks again to EOXS for providing this platform. In addition to this show, they're bringing businesses online by providing a standardized digital workspace for all your steel related needs. Today, we are happy to welcome the president of Grand Steel Products Incorporated, Michael Barnett. Mike, thank you so much for joining us here today. How are you?
Great. I'm great. Thank you for having me. Appreciate the invite.
Oh, well, we're always happy to talk to people at multiple levels of importance in the steel industry, but to get the big honcho himself of an organization is always something we really look forward to. We have a lot of ground to cover. Obviously, there's so much we want to get into, but one easy way we like to start off for any new guest is, what is your steel story? How did you find your way into the business?
Well, um, so I was going to college at Western Michigan University. I was studying finance and economics, and I graduated from Western and was trying to figure out the next step. And so made a phone call to my father and said, "Hey, I'm newly graduated," which he was well aware of, and
I hope.
wondering when do I start looking for Grand Steel? And he said, I think almost verbatim, start what? Better go get a job. And so I went and got a job. I went to work for an insurance company, New York Life, and got a fantastic primer to the business world and the finance side. Um, I was working in sales for about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And from there, went into a fast track management program. I discovered I liked the management side of the business, of the insurance business, more than the sales side. And did that for another year, year and a half. At that time, it was 2005, and Grand Steel was flourishing with the two employees that were there at the time. And my dad and I have a disagreement on this. He thinks that I asked me to come in. I don't think that'll ever be settled, but I joined Grand Steel late 2005. And the first thing that I did was get sent down to a steel plant, a processor of ours in Detroit. And I was climbing in and out of steel coils for the first 2 or 3 months, miking, measuring, weighing, taking pictures, getting data, and bringing it back and putting notes in the system. So that's how I got my start in steel business. We have family in the steel business, a separate company in Chicago. I have other more distant relatives in the steel business. So in one way or another, I think it might be in our blood.
It seems like it's a recurring theme whenever we have people who are legacied into the steel industry through relatives or direct familial lines, that hands-on experience is a big component of it. Was that a big thing for your dad? Okay.
Certainly. I think one of the best things that he did was tell me to go get a job first and get some experience outside of the family business, if you will. Um, I was the third employee at Grand. And so I was coming in to do some sales, coming in to do maybe some marketing. This was still a time when the fax machine was hot, and now I'm not really sure where it is. But it was a different time, but something that you cannot replace is hands-on experience. And That was a very valuable learning tool for me to know how to not only gather details on steel, but also figure out what was important and what wasn't. Our business back then, especially, was almost entirely non-prime. So buying steel from the mills that, um, for some reason or another, was not going to the intended application. And so from time to time, a lot of coils had a fair amount of character, we like to call it. And we'd have to make notes on that. And so I really got to learn the ins and outs. And then through the things that I would bring back, we'd have discussions about, well, how did that happen? What point in the steelmaking process did that happen? And that definitely gave me a quick education on it, which was built on.
For our viewers and listeners that may be a little in the dark on that, when you say character, are you referring to the steel that was rolled for a specific purpose, but it was either the wrong weight, wrong composition, something of that nature?
Sure, we've seen just about everything. However, from time to time, I'm surprised with defects that the mills make on sometimes on purpose to run steel through before they go into a prime run. But there is such a wide range of um, non-prime designations on steel. And the most important thing there is knowing what applications can use what issues or defects. Um, and that's what we got our start doing it well. We are a company that is more transparent than not. So we like to let our customers make the decision many times whether or not they can use something, and we see it as our job to, well, especially back then, give them as much information as possible to make that decision.
Now, I definitely want to move on towards your climb up the ladder towards your current position, but I am interested when you said you spent a lot of time, like 2 to 3 months working in the plants. Was that your first ever hands-on job of that kind? Had you done any like physical labor type of jobs before that?
Oh yeah, very much so. Yeah, I mean, it was a different kind of physical labor. First of all, I growing up, I was taken to steel plants, and that smell of our plant when I go out and walk back there brings back memories of quite frankly, when I was quite young, and that's pretty cool. But yeah, I had plenty of manual labor jobs, construction jobs, and that sort of thing.
It always feels like the people in the steel industry at every level are cut from a different cloth. You meet people that were, bartenders at one point. Now they're, high up in the steel industry. Do you think that kind of innate toughness is a prerequisite? The ability to do those kinds of jobs?
Well, there's a saying that we like to say around here, and that's you don't need a degree to sell steel, or a license for that matter. Um, so on one hand, it's a good thing because a college education or a degree does go a long way. But in our business, it's really quite focused on the industrial, the manufacturing side of things, the skilled trade side of things. The more you know about those things, I believe the more in tune you can be with the product you're selling, which ends up going into some manufacturing process. On the flip side, there's no handbook, right? There's no ingredient list on how to do this well, and so you got to figure it out. And there's people in our industry, a lot of people in our industry, who do it very, very well. Unfortunately, there's some people in our industry who take more chances than they probably should. But all in all, it's a great group of people, and it's a great industry to be in.
Would you, this might be a little offensive, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Would you say you figured it out?
Like, figured it out as in
No, just how to
figured it.
sell steel.
All right. So That's an interesting question. It's a very good question. I'd say when I started in the business, I started in 2000, the end of 2005, going into 2006. There was a pretty substantial bull run in the steel industry happening at that time, and prices were going straight up. And I was sitting there like getting calls, selling steel, things were moving and shaking. And I can go into my dad and I'd say, what were you always so stressed out about? This is sort of easy. I got a rude awakening there. That's just an anecdotal thing, but in the beginning of my journey, I'll say, my dad told me it would take 3 to 5 years to learn the steel business, to kind of figure out what I was doing. And I, fresh out of college, fresh off a little 3-year stint in the 3-4 year stint in the insurance business. I thought I knew what I was doing. I thought I was smart enough to learn it quickly. And sure enough, about 3 years in, I really felt like I had a good understanding of the fundamentals. Shortly after that, something happened. I don't remember what it was specifically at this point, but I remember that something happened and I thought to myself, holy cow, I still don't know what I'm doing. And I'm 3 years in. At about the 5-year mark, I really felt like I had a pretty good understanding of the different fundamentals in the steel business. That being said, from that point on, I've learned something new just about every day. And just to continue on that topic, one of the reasons that it is somewhat difficult to hire people into the sales side in the steel industry or the processing side, the production side, is it takes a lot of time to learn these things. And I believe that has been shortened somewhat, but with all the resources that we have, the internet, the different associations that you can learn through. However, it still does take a bit of time to learn steel and learn what happens, how it happens, when it happens. And it's important to have that knowledge. So we start most of our individuals who come in with little experience in the either inventory management or inside sales or on the freight side. And in our company, we like to have people work their way up and learn the different departments and then feel that they have at least that business intel to be able to go in to do something else, like maybe sales, or maybe they want to be in production. And so we're really training a lot of people from the ground up.
What sort of qualities are you looking for in those in that recruitment process?
Well, depending on what position we're looking at, I certainly like people who are detail oriented. Frankly, I'm not that detail oriented, so I like to have people around me who are. My inside sales manager, I don't know what I would do without her because she kind of keeps me organized. But organization, detail oriented people seem to do very well. On the sales side, I mean, the organizational aspect is good. Being able to talk to people on the phone is good. Sometimes we have that, I don't want to classify a whole generation, but the millennial issue where it's tough to pick up the phone sometimes versus sending an email. But when the first, second, and third emails don't work, sometimes you have to pick up the phone and you have to make that call. And we've gotten real lucky there and had a lot of people who were good at that and didn't take too much prodding. But I'd say being detail oriented, being organized is very important. And in our case, we do a lot of prime, but about at least 50% of what we do is on the non-prime side. And that side of the business takes a little longer to learn because there are so many nuances with steel and so many things to consider when you're deciding whether or not steel would be suitable for an application. So just the ability to absorb information and learn and be detail oriented and organized.
You have been the president for since 2018, or at least that's like from my research that was when the announcements were made. Um, I want to get into your process and like what that was like for you, but was that ever an end goal, a specific end goal that you had during your time working in the company?
Well, yeah, sure. I mean, as I mentioned, I was the third employee at Grand Steel. We've over the years we've built not only our physical footprint, but our name in the industry, our reputation. It's something that is extremely important to my father. It's something that I've carried that trait on. It's an extremely important thing to me to make sure that we do what we say we're going to do, that we pay our bills on time, and those are two things that you can't really substitute. But yeah, of course, I wanted to be somebody who took the business from where we are now or where we were to another level. And quite frankly, my dad, who is still active in the business, he's 74 years old, has helped a lot with that process and has guided me along. And we've done 4 major projects here. Our latest, we doubled our footprint, so we added on about 45,000 square feet, and we're putting in a bunch of new equipment. And if I hadn't learned the lessons I learned when we bought the building in 2008, when we expanded in 2014, when we put in a lab in 2017, when we bought a bunch of trucks, I wouldn't have had the experience to move this expansion forward, which is still in progress. The building is built. 2 out of the 3 pieces of equipment are in, but we're really excited to bring everything together in the next 3 to 6 months.
It's wonderful when you have that kind of built-in support system and a cohesive partnership that is also deepened by family. And it seems like it's become really effective for you and Grand. Um, At what point did the conversations about you being promoted start between you and him, and whoever else was involved?
Well, we are a pretty close-knit, small family business. We have just about 40 employees. Um, Everybody here has a very important role in the company. We are very lean. People are busy. One thing can't happen without one person can't do their job if this person's not doing their job, that sort of thing. And my role in the company developed sort of organically, I'll say. And so there weren't a lot of discussions about it. A title is a title. I mean, it doesn't mean a whole lot. It's not like my duties and responsibilities changed drastically when that role or position was handed down. We still operated somewhat fundamentally the same. However, as I've gotten further along, my dad has stepped away a little bit, and so the decisions now fall squarely on my shoulders. And what I've learned is in the steel business, you can't really push aside everything that you were doing to take care of the big things. You got to kind of do both and juggle. And so, the title is just a title, but I do take it seriously. However, there wasn't a big change in my everyday duties and responsibility. My responsibility is to grow the company, to keep the company healthy, to continue doing what we say we're going to do, to promote our people from within, and to elevate everybody in the company and be a leader. And quite frankly, I'm still learning how to do that.
Well, you brought up juggling just a little bit ago, and I think it's safe to say that you, as well as every single company and every single industry, has had to juggle quite a bit over the last few years. Talk to me a little bit about how you and Grand handled the pandemic. Where like how would you grade your response?
Um, how would I grade our response? B plus. I
Well, I don't think
another thing.
that the idea being that this is such an astronomical event, no one really knows what to do. We've seen governments flounder around about it. We've seen people at every level sort of react in different ways. Did you find yourself relying on your dad more during those early days, or was it from the jump? Just
Um, well, I'll say, another thing there's no handbook for is how to run a company through a pandemic.
yeah,
And
no.
I certainly just have to credit our people here, our team, our employees. They got us through this pandemic. They were the ones who continued to come into work to make sure the critical responsibilities were taken care of. They were the ones that helped with anything from putting up flyers in the plant to staying late to handle, a customer order that because of one plant or another being closed down due to a COVID outbreak, rerouting trucks, doing anything that needed to be done in order to continue operating as normally as possible. And quite frankly, there's no way I could have done it without the dedication and drive of the people that we have here. We were real quick to put out a letter on it. As a matter of fact, I got a couple of responses saying, you're starting trouble. You're buying into the hype, and
It's a
honestly, I
scam.
wasn't
It's a hoax.
sure. Yeah, I wasn't really sure, if that was true, but we felt it was the responsible thing to do. We had a couple COVID related issues in the plant. That is another thing I believe that we handled very well, including, shutting down our operation, not once, but twice, fumigating or whatever they do, the disinfecting the entire building and plant. Making sure that people felt safe, making sure people had the PPE. Yeah,
Personal
PPE.
protective equipment. Yeah.
Yes. There's PPE, there's PPP. The PPE that they needed, we were able to actually donate some to our local police station because they had a shortage. So everybody here reacted very diligently to the demands that were put on them to help us get through the pandemic. And we have some really awesome, dedicated employees. I'll say that for sure.
So since the world has started to open back up again, we've seen a sharp increase in demand for steel products of all kinds. How has that increase in demand affected Grand?
Well, big time. It came at the right time for us. This last project that we embarked on in 2019, adding the building space and the equipment was by 3x the biggest investment we've ever made in the company. And in April and May, we were down 70% with our business. So those were some pretty stressful times. Thankfully, the fundamentals in the business, the industry and the business turned around. The economy started to come back. I don't know where all the demand came from, but the mills certainly had some supply shortages, I guess you would say, and all of a sudden steel started to go on a bull run, and the price of steel started to go up pretty drastically and dramatically. Um, we are mostly a spot player in the steel market, and so what that means is we service a lot of customers on a just-in-time basis, on a sometimes we're the last resort to find steel if a mill is late, and we keep a fairly large available inventory to be sold. And so the value of that inventory has gone up and had gone up, and we were able to capitalize on some of that. But as the old adage goes in the steel business, you make money the first 6 months and you try not to lose it the second 6 months. And I think this is one of the years that that's certainly something that we're watching very closely and controlling our inventories. We're still buying steel every single day. We still have to have steel to sell for our salesmen, for our regular customers who look to us to supply them, albeit on a spot basis. But, these are relationships we've had for a decade, in some cases or more. And so we've continued to buy, and that's been our MO. We buy when the market's going up, we buy when the market's going down. And the fundamentals came through at the right time for us, gave us a little breathing room. And now we're doing things such as hiring people, obviously putting in the equipment, figuring out how to run a plant with 2 slitters, a brand new packaging line. So for us, the pandemic was very difficult, but it's been a good 6 months for us getting back up to par and developing a little bit of breathing room, I'll say.
Would you compare this current bull run that we're seeing to your earlier days at Grand, when you thought that that life couldn't be easier? Obviously a little bit different context.
Not all bull runs are created equal. This has been a real head scratcher. I mean, being a spot player, most of what we buy is not sold. So we are buying material every single day without a home, essentially. Now, it's one thing if you're buying a lot of steel, but you know that this customer is going to take it or that customer is going to take it, or you can apply it to this order or that order. A lot of what we do is buy steel and hope that we know what we're doing. We know customers who can use it. We know that there are regular sizes that come in and out the door. However, when the market is increasing so dramatically, history has shown us time after time that there is a correction. There will be a correction. What goes up must come down, and the steel industry has proven that time and time again. So while it's nice on the front end to get the profits of an increased value in your inventory, it's also very scary on the back end, especially when you're buying non-prime and the price of steel goes all the way up here, and you might buy 10 coils and only 8 out of the 10 are usable. Well, that's a pretty expensive piece of scrap that you're going to put in the scrap bin if a couple of those coils don't work out. On the prime side, it's been very challenging. Again, being mostly a spot player, we don't have a lot of contracts with the mill. We have a few. And so it's been difficult we've had a lot of opportunities to quote new customers, but unfortunately the mills were caught a little bit off guard, which is understandable because, who knew what the pandemic was going to bring. And as they've tried to catch up to get back up to par, they haven't really had a lot of excess capacity to sell to spot buyers like ourselves. So on the prime side, it's been very difficult for us. On the non-prime side, we've continued to buy throughout the pandemic. And, now we're I wouldn't say we're at an inflection point yet, but we do see it coming in the next 3 to 6 months, I would say.
What is that process like? That the idea of almost being an augur, like you're trying to divine the future by whatever data is available. What is that process like for you?
Well, our crystal balls aren't too clear around here, so it's always difficult. It's always subjective. It's looking at different facts and statistics and data and reading news and looking at the spread between scrap and hot roll and trying to get a feel for what's going on. They're not perfect indicators. It's a bunch of data that has to kind of come together for you to make a decision. Do I want to go long on this, or do I want to stay short? Do I want to, put our necks out on the line for this big buy or that big buy, knowing that, we've seen some pretty compact cycles over the past, 5 years or so, where one month it can be soaring, flying high, and the next month it can be, you know, headed south pretty quickly. But also learn lessons from the past. I mean, in 2014, we were bringing in some import, and we thought we had a great deal, a great buy. And while the boat was on the water and the steel was headed here, all of a sudden the price kind of hit a peak and then started to regress, and then it picked up steam going down. And by the time the vessel arrived with our steel, we had already, if we would have sold it at market cost, incurred quite a substantial loss. So, we take lessons like that whenever, the business gives you lemons, you got to try to figure out a way to make lemonade. And if you can, learn something from it. And we certainly have learned from most of our mistakes and failures in the past. That's something that we put a lot of emphasis on.
Well, Mike, I really appreciate all that phenomenal information. We're running up on time, and I know you've got a ton of things you need to get back to, so we don't want to keep you, but we genuinely hope you've enjoyed your time, and we would love to have you back on at some point to further enlighten us with some of your insights, if that sounds good.
That sounds great. I did want to mention one thing. So we are involved in the Association of Steel Distributors, the ASD. ASD is now a technical affiliate of the FMA, Fabricators and Manufacturers Association. I happen to be the chairman of the ASD, and we would encourage anyone who has either been in the business for a while and not involved with the ASD, or if you're a distributor of steel or work with distributors of steel, we are an organization that has a emphasis on education and training and information that can be valuable for people in our industry and doing what we're doing. So I would encourage anybody who's interested to check out the Association of Steel Distributors. I think it's steeldistributors.org. And we would welcome you at one of our meetings when we start meeting in person again. We're extremely excited to get back to that. And I just noticed that my screen name is Stormy on there. We recently participated in a virtual event through the FMA, where we had a fighter pilot come in and do a demonstration on some of the missions that he's going through, and he had us rename all of our screen names. So I see that now, and that's very interesting. My nickname's not Stormy. I just want to
like you're the head honcho, man. Whatever you want to put there, that's there.
In this case, I was the communications director that was forecasting the weather in the simulation. But anyway, so back to the ASD. It's a great organization. And I would encourage anybody to check it out, and certainly can get a hold of me or email me at mbarnett@grandsteel.net if you have questions about it.
Well, Mike, I think that sounds really interesting. And that sounds like we have another topic to talk about next time. I'm glad we got through all this stuff so we could go in on that at your earliest available convenience. So thank you very much for that. But Great. To our listeners and viewers, this has been another insightful episode of EOXS's Stories on Steel. Thanks again to Mike for stopping by. And remember, whether galvanized or hot rolled, EOXS will provide a marketplace to take any steel business to the online sector. Thank you and good night.